Hi, everybody. What about protesting? You may recall that in the first unit we talked about how minor literature is a language that was not built for the writer using it. That it's literature created in a language that was not built for the writer using it. That's what I tried to illustrate with attention to the use of language, mixing languages, using irony and code words, and paying attention to how language can exclude and deny. Earlier, I talked about the status of minority writers as split between two or more identities, often but not always because of mainstream culture rejection of their identity. I think this was clear in the language section when we talked about how some of the use of the language, this double language or this double coded language, is also due to pressure and even oppression from mainstream society. In the US, this mainstream society is white, Christian, English speaking, heterosexual, and ableist. Going back to the first unit, I said that Deleuze and Guattari claimed that minor literature is always communal and political. Minority writers will always be more aware of the social and political forces that shape our society because they shape their everyday experience and their subject matters in a way that's not so obvious when we are talking about more mainstream writers. A white writer may or may not need to write about racism, but an African American will need to pay attention to racism even if they might not want to. They don't really have a choice but to face racism. Because anytime they will step out to the street or every time they publish a poem, racism will be part of that experience. I'm not sure that what I just say is always true, but it is what Deleuze and Guattari are claiming, and it does definitely resonate with a lot of the text that we read thus far and are going to continue to read in this course. In those texts, even if the focus was different, there did seem to be some kind of protest or analysis of the structure of power at play behind the plot or the description in the poem, essay, or story. It was political in the sense that it dealt with how power works and who has power and how society is structured. So it does make sense to say that a lot of minor literature is political, a lot of minor literature is resisting or protesting, but sometimes this protest is not just something that exists, but it's at the center of the text. The text is explicitly aimed at complaining about some kind of social injustice and asking for its correction. Not just pointing at the problem, but actually wanting to change things. In that case, we sometimes call it protest literature or resistance literature. The aim of this kind of writing is not just to entertain or please aesthetically, or even not just to express a certain identity or emotional state. Rather, the explicit aim of protest literature is to call attention to something that is wrong in our society and should change. This is not just satire about general tendencies that human beings have to be petty or greedy, but it's an expression of an immediate discontent that demands a political remedy. Not only minority writers engage in protest, but in many circumstances they are more likely to engage in protest. In literature courses that you might have had with me or other people, We don't often read explicit protest writing because protest writing's message is often quite clear and there's not that much to say about it beyond just saying this is what the poem is trying to accomplish. Literature professor often, not all of us, but many of us, we like to think of literature as detached from immediate political concerns. And often it really is detached from immediate political concern. It might be political in a general sense, but it's not like it's demanding a specific change like protest literature does. In addition, protest literature often ages poorly. If the protest was successful, then we don't really need the protest literature anymore, and it's not that interesting unless you're looking to see what kind of protest works. And even if the protest is not successful, then older versions of it are not really relevant to today's situation. A new protest is interesting in the moment, but it doesn't always belong in the classroom. However, I do think that in the context of our course, exploring protest literature is important, and especially because it makes sure that we do not see minority writers as merely victims of their circumstances, just suffering discrimination. They often point the circumstances out, not just to complain, but to change them, to protest them, to resist them. Minor literature is not only about complaining, but also about transforming. In the next video, I will give an example of complex protest poetry. And in the third video of this unit, I'm going to give attention to another cultural formation, you could call it, that has the potential for resistance. I'm going to talk about hip hop and rap.